What if I told you there's an ant so deadly that indigenous tribes use its sting as a test of manhood, and most grown men pass out from the pain? Or that there's a colony that can strip a 300-pound alligator down to bone in 24 hours, using nothing but their jaws and teamwork? Right now, beneath your feet, the most brutal war in Earth's history is happening. Ant colonies with armies numbering in the millions are locked in constant battle for territory, resources, and survival. These aren't just insects. They're military superpowers with weapons that would make human generals jealous. Today, we're ranking the 10 deadliest ant armies on the planet. We're talking about colonies with soldiers that can explode themselves to kill enemies, venom that melts flesh, and battle tactics so advanced they've been studied by actual military strategists. But here's the question that keeps scientists awake at night. If all these killer colonies went to war tomorrow, which one would be left standing? The answer at number 1 will blow your mind. Let's dive in. Starting our countdown at number 10, weaver ants, the architects of aerial warfare. Weaver ants don't live on the ground like most ants. They prefer the trees. Up there, they build whole cities made of leaves. And the way they do it is wild. They use their own babies as glue. The workers pick up the soft little larvae and squeeze them like glue sticks, dripping silk to stick leaves together. That's how they make giant tree houses. Their soldiers fight like tiny gymnasts with serious anger issues. They're like the Rey Mysterios of the animal kingdom. They leap from branch to branch, lock their bodies together to make living bridges, and attack from every level of the tree at once. When they charge, they don't just fight, they fall on you from above like a rain. Weaver ants don't just bite, they also spray formic acid, a burning chemical that comes from a special gland in their back end. Think of it like a tiny built-in spray gun on their butt. When they bend their abdomen forward, they can fire this acid straight at enemies. It burns through skin and can blind attackers. Their bite feels like being stabbed with a hot needle. Worst part? Once they bite, they don't let go. Why they're number 10? Well, weaver ants control massive territories, sometimes entire forests, through superior positioning and three-dimensional warfare. They beat most ground-dwelling ants simply by staying out of reach and attacking from above. But they have one fatal weakness that keeps them at number 10. Take them away from their trees and they're vulnerable. The colony at number 9 has no such limitations. Ghost ants, the invisible assassins. Ghost ants, the masters of stealth warfare who've turned invisibility into a deadly weapon. These ants are tiny and pale, so you barely notice them until they're already on you. They're only about 1.5 millimeters long. That's thinner than a credit card, smaller than a grain of rice. They're basically little ninja specks that can sneak into anything without being noticed. Ghost ants don't announce their presence like other species. They slip into enemy territory undetected, establish secret bases inside walls and cracks, then launch surprise attacks when their enemies least expect it. What makes ghost ants terrifying is their ability to appear everywhere at once. One day your house is ant-free, the next day there are thousands of them in every room. They're like a biological magic trick that turns deadly. Ghost ants are nearly impossible to eliminate because you can never find all their hiding spots. They've mastered the art of guerrilla warfare, striking fast and disappearing before retaliation. Why are they at number 9? Ghost ants have conquered human habitats across the globe through pure invisibility and persistence. They're tiny, but they can pop up anywhere, and that makes them tough enemies. However, their tiny size limits their individual combat power. The colony at number 8 has solved this problem by turning size into their greatest advantage. Dinosaur ants, the prehistoric powerhouses. Dinosaur ants, the living fossils that have survived since the age of dinosaurs by being absolutely indestructible. These ants are called dinosaur ants for a good reason. They're massive, primitive, and built like tanks, at 1 inch long. That's about the same length as your house key. Each worker is bigger than most other species' soldiers. Unlike modern ants, dinosaur ants have kept their wasp-like stinger and can see perfectly. They're like ants that refuse to evolve past being perfect killing machines. Every dinosaur ant is a potential queen. That means every single worker has the genetic programming to fight like their life depends on it, because it literally does. They don't have expendable soldiers. Every one of them is already an elite. Here's something wild. If a dinosaur ant tries to lay eggs when it's not supposed to, the other ants will pin it down like how a human police hold a stubborn criminal to the ground. And they don't just do it for a few minutes. Sometimes they keep it there for up to 4 days. It's their own kind of military discipline. Why, they're 8th on our list. Dinosaur ants have survived mass extinctions, climate changes, and millions of years of evolution by being perfectly adapted killers. Each individual is worth several ants from other species. But their primitive social structure limits their coordination. The colony at number 7 has evolved beyond these limitations to create something truly terrifying. Honeypot ants, the living storage tanks. Honeypot ants, the colony that turned some of their own into living food storage. They have special ants called repletes that swell up so much with food they can't even walk. These repletes can grow as big as grapes, storing enough food to keep the colony alive and ready for war if an attack comes. Honeypot ants have mastered the art of surviving long, hard times. When other ants go hungry in droughts or winter, honeypot ants just eat from their living food tanks and keep fighting at full strength. These ants don't just fight for territory, they fight for other colonies' food stores. They'll launch coordinated raids to capture enemy honeypots, essentially stealing their opponent's fuel or food reserves. When times get tough, honeypot ants eat the same ants that were used to store food. These storage ants stay alive and hang like tanks, and when the stored food runs out, the colony eats them too. Why they're 7 on our list, honeypot ants have solved the logistics problem that defeats most ant armies: how to maintain fighting strength during tough times. Their living food supply chain makes them nearly impossible to starve out, but their reliance on static storage makes them vulnerable to fast-moving attackers. The colony at number 6 has weaponized speed itself, which can easily take down the honeypot's ants. Trapjaw ants, the lightning strikers. Trapjaw ants, the snipers who've turned their jaws into spring-loaded weapons of mass destruction. Remember how honeypot's ants were strong because of excess food storage? Well, trapjaw ants are strong because they're built like tiny killing machines. Their jawbones snap shut at 145 miles per hour, faster than you can blink, faster than you can think. It's the fastest recorded movement of any animal on Earth. Those jaws generate 300 times the ant's body weight in force. They're so sensitive they can detect a single hair touching them and snap shut in 0.13 milliseconds. It's like having a mousetrap with superhuman reflexes. When threatened or faced with danger, trapjaw ants don't just fight. They use their jaws like catapults to launch themselves through the air. How does this work? Their jaws open wide and lock, almost like a loaded mousetrap. Then the muscles in their head build up tension like pulling back a slingshot. When the jaws snap shut, all that energy bursts out in a split second. If they bite the ground or a hard surface while doing this, the force bounces back and launches them into the air. just like how it's done in Angry Birds. This trick lets them escape from enemies with ease. Why are they number 7 on our list? These ants hunt like snipers, positioning themselves perfectly and waiting motionless for hours. The moment prey enters their kill zone, they immediately snap. That's game over for their prey, but they're specialists who mostly succeed in places with dead leaves, twigs, and soft soil because that cover lets them ambush their enemies easily. They also need some open ground to launch their jaw attacks. Take them out of that environment, and they become vulnerable, especially in hard, dry, or open areas where they can't hide or use their jaws well. One weakness makes trap jaws beatable. The ants ahead don't have such vulnerabilities for you to explore. As a matter of fact, you'll pray not to ever run into any one of them. They're the most deadliest and most powerful on Earth. Crazy ants, the chemical warfare specialists. Crazy ants, the colony that's conquering the ant world through advanced chemistry and tactical insanity. Crazy ants don't move in straight lines like most ants. They run around in fast, jerky, unpredictable patterns. But don't let their chaotic movement fool you. Crazy ants are like tiny chemists carrying mobile laboratories. They've developed the ultimate defense, the ability to neutralize their enemy's deadliest weapons. They can neutralize fire ant venom, which is their biggest ant rivals, by covering themselves with formic acid. The formic shield also works as a general defense against many chemical-based attacks in ants' wars. They're like the army in the Hercules movie. And while other ants attack in neat formations, crazy ants fight with coordinated chaos. They swarm their enemies in wild, random-looking patterns. But it's actually a smart confusion strategy meant to break defenses. The enemy never knows what angle the attack will come from. Crazy ants have fought with so many rival ants colonies and have come out victorious in every one of them. They were first seen as a big problem in Texas when they took over many ant colonies over there. From there, they've been moving into different states and countries, taking over many other ant colonies wherever they go. They're basically like the Nazi army in the ant world. Here's something that sounds like pure science fiction. Crazy ants are attracted to electricity. They crawl into wires, computers, and even power plants. When enough of them pile up, they cause short circuits and shut everything down. So while spreading their empire, they've also been shutting down human tech like it's part of their war. You probably be wondering, why are they number 5 in our list and not number 2, despite heavy dominance and superpowers, right? Well, they've developed immunity to their enemies' weapons while maintaining overwhelming numbers. They're beating species that should be way stronger in terms of superior chemistry, but since they're still relatively new to most environments they're taking over, they can be vulnerable to climates, predators, or diseases they haven't faced yet could slow them down. Let's give them time and see if they could take over the entire ant world and probably move up the rank. That leaves us with number 4, a colony that has spent millions of years perfecting an attack strong enough to take down even the crazy ants. Fire ants, the swarm masters. Fire ants are like the direct rivals of the crazy ants. We are going to give you an insight of their rivalry when we are done talking about the fire ants. Back to our number 4. Fire ants don't fight fair, they overwhelm. When one fire ant bites, it releases a special chemical that works like an alarm signal. That signal spreads fast to other fire ants around, and within seconds, hundreds of fire ants are rushing to join the attack. And they all bite down and sting at the same time, pumping venom that feels like being pierced with a hot needle. When going against a fire ant, you're never just fighting one ant alone. You're fighting an entire angry mob of ruthless tiny monsters. Each fire ant soldier is like a tiny gladiator armed with a built-in flamethrower. Their stinger doesn't just sting you, It injects a venom mix called solanopsin, a chemical cocktail that burns like fire, kills skin cells, and leaves severe pain that lasts for days. With such built-in fire armors and strength in numbers, they can easily take down almost any ant colony in the world. But that's not all about these tiny avengers. When water floods their nests, fire ants don't panic. They lock their bodies together and build living rafts that can float for weeks. So if you ever see a clump of ants drifting on water, chances are you're looking at fire ants. Imagine 100,000 ants creating an unsinkable battleship made of pure hatred. Here is the most interesting part. Fire ants have perfected the art of the coordinated attack. They don't just bite once. They grab your skin with their jaws, curve their body around, and sting repeatedly like tiny ninjas with poison daggers. They've literally mastered the art of causing pain. Why they're number 4 on our list? Fire ants have conquered the southern United States ant world through superior numbers and coordination. Their super colonies contain 500,000 individuals controlling territories larger than Monaco population. That's why they're considered stronger than the crazy ant. But they have one weakness. They're not built for individual combat. Now let's talk about the battle between fire ant and crazy ants real quick before we continue our countdown. This is one of the most biggest rivalry in the ant world. Fire ants and crazy ants have been direct rivals for over 20 years now. They live in similar warm places like Texas, Florida, and other southern parts of the U.S., where they constantly fight over food and nesting spots. Remember when I said fire ants rely on venomous stings and massive numbers to win battles, while crazy ants use their chaotic swarms tricks and chemical shield, right? Well, based on their individual stats, the crazy ants have a big advantage thanks to their acid shield. They can neutralize fire ant venom by covering themselves with formic acid, which is basically like showing up to a gunfight wearing body armor. Because of that, in those head-to-head battles between both ants, crazy ants usually come out on top, overwhelming fire ants with their drunken master battle movements while using their shield against the fire ants' attacks. But do not forget, the fire ants have the numbers. There've been so many clashes between two colonies, with fire ants taking the major casualties, but due to their population, they're still holding their grounds and even pushing back the crazy ants from some of the territories over. But as powerful as both ants may seem, they're nothing compared to the colony coming up next on our list. The colony at number 3 has gone beyond all limits by creating soldiers so powerful they barely have any weaknesses at all. Driver ants, the blind destroyers. Driver ants, the colony that turned blindness into their greatest weapon and created the most feared army in Africa. Driver ant are basically blind. They can't see like other ant colonies. But that's what makes driver ants absolutely terrifying. They've turned this weakness into unstoppable strength. What do I actually mean? They fight using pure instinct and teamwork. They follow chemical signals, called the pheromones, which helps their entire colony move like one giant army with no distractions. Their communication is so advanced, it makes human language look primitive. Driver ants march in massive army groups. I'm not just referring to 1 million or 2 million ants. We're talking about 15 to 20 million driver ants in a single colony marching together. Just to tell you how crazy this number is, the largest human army in the world has the population of 2.1 million active personnel, which is China. Which is to say, if the driver ants wage war against China army, sorry to say this, but they might actually have a fair chance of winning. They move in columns that can literally go on for kilometers, like tiny towdy. As they march, They attack and eat almost anything alive that can't escape. When other animals sense the driver ants coming, they immediately start running for their lives. And I'm not just talking about other ant colonies or insects. I'm talking about snakes, birds, even larger wild animals. It has even been reported that in some parts of Africa, if driver ants are approaching, people will leave their homes temporarily. The ants can invade human houses, attack livestock, and make life impossible for any living creature. These ants can consume 500,000 prey animals per day. They've been recorded stripping large animals down to bone in hours. They're not just one of our most deadliest ant predators, they're a force of nature that reshapes entire environments. And do not forget the fact they're literally blind. But still yet, they're able to coordinate attacks with military precision. Why are they number 3 in our list? Driver ants have mastered warfare on a scale that's almost incomprehensible. They control territories the size of small countries and defeat every other African ant species through superior tactics and overwhelming numbers. But they're still bound by the limitations of group warfare like the fire ants. Without their numbers, the likes of crazy ants and fire ants will easily go head-to-head with them. But the colony we have in number 2 has created individual soldiers so deadly that each one is worth an entire army. Army ants, the ultimate nomadic destroyers who've turned migration into a weapon of mass destruction. They share some traits with driver ants, but when they use their own bodies to form a temporary nest called a bivouac. It's like a mobile camp. How does it work? About 20 million army ants link their body like one giant chain. They hook their legs like pins and even grab each other with their jaws, locking tight until the living nest is formed. Little by little, they weave themselves into walls, floors, and even tunnels. Inside this living fortress, they hide their queen and babies where it's safe and warm. Let's talk about their strength. Army ant soldiers are walking nightmares. Some have mandibles so large they can't even feed themselves. They're living weapons that exist only to kill. Army ant jaws are so sharp and strong they can cut through tough materials like leather. Their mandibles were so powerful that ancient tribes actually used them as a surgical tool for injured humans. They let the ant bite the edges of a wound closed, then broke off the body, leaving the head and jaws clamped tight like a natural clip. The jaws held the skin together until it healed. Army ants move in columns 20 meters wide and 100 meters long, consuming everything in their path. They take down prey as large as baby birds and small mammals through coordinated swarm attacks. Army ants don't just fight on one level. They spread their attacks in every direction at once. They attack from the ground. They send some of their soldiers to climb trees and flush out enemies, and they even strike through underground tunnels, making them the true masters of vertical combat. Their presence is so overwhelming that everything in the forest reacts to them. When army ants march, every creature runs for its life. And we're not just talking about insects or other ant colonies. We're talking snakes, lizards, even mammals. They all clear out of the way completely. Army ants aren't just predators. They're an ecological force that reshapes the entire environment. Because when they're on the move, the whole forest literally belongs to them. Why are they number 2 on our list? Well, army ants have created the most sophisticated military machine in the insect world. They defeat every other species through superior tactics, overwhelming numbers, and pure brutality. They're the apex predators of the ant kingdom, but even army ants bow down to our number 1 colony, a species so legendary, their very existence has become the stuff of myths. These are the ants that make other colonies feel like servants. And at our number 1, we have the bullet ants, the undisputed heavyweight champions of the ant world. These aren't just the strongest ants on Earth, they're living legends that have turned pain into an art form and fear into a weapon. A bullet ant is what happens when evolution decides to create the perfect warrior. They're built to be the ultimate fighter in the insect world. At 1 inch long, they're like giants among ants, bigger than beetles, and even more intimidating than scorpions. They're tough and armored like tanks, and their sting is insanely powerful, not just painful, but one of the most painful stings on Earth. In some Amazon tribes, young men prove their strength by wearing gloves filled with bullet ants that sting their hands repeatedly. If they can endure the agony, they're considered ready for anything life throws at them. Many pass out from the pain. Here's where bullet ants become mythical. Remember, I told you earlier that their sting is considered one of the highest pain in the world. Let me give more insight on that. Their sting ranks 4.0 on the pain index chart, the absolute maximum rating possible. Scientists describe it as pure, intense, brilliant pain. They say is like walking over flaming charcoal with a 3-inch nail embedded in your leg. But that description doesn't do justice to this warriors. People who've been stung report hallucinations, uncontrollable shaking, and pain so intense they lose the ability to think clearly. The pain lasts for 24 hours straight, earning them the nickname 24-hour ant. Bullet ants don't need to attack in swarms or go against other colonies, because their reputation alone does the fighting for them. Other insects flee at the mere sight of them. Their presence brings nightmare to everyone, including humans. They're like the godfather of the animal world. Everything about the bullet ant is designed to cause pain and terror. Their stinger is long and sharp, like a medical needle, and when it injects venom, it feels like an electric shock. Their jaws are strong enough to bite right through skin, so even without their stinger, they're still very dangerous. Their legs are strong enough to carry prey 30 times their own weight, straight up a tree trunk. They're not just strong, they're perfectly engineered killing machines. Bullet ant colonies are way smaller than other ant colonies. There are only around 1,000 individuals in each colony, but each ant is worth 100 of any other species. That's why they still control vast territories in the Amazon rainforest, and nothing dares challenges this dominance. They don't need massive armies because they are the army. A single bullet ant can clear an entire area just by being there. They've an undefeated record of never losing a fight. They've been observed defeating army ants, fire ants, crazy ants, and even small vertebrates. Crazy ant and fire ant put together still don't stand a chance against this tiny monsters. The only thing that can stop a bullet ant is another bullet ant. They're apex predators in a world of apex predators. Why are they the most strongest ant predators? Well, bullet ants have achieved something no other ant species has. They've transcended the need for numbers through pure individual excellence. They're proof that sometimes quality beats quantity. They've turned their bodies into weapons so deadly that just facing them changes the way every battle is fought. They represent the ultimate evolution of ant warfare and proof that sometimes absolute quality beats overwhelming quantity. In a world where other ants need millions of soldiers, bullet ants need only themselves to dominate. So, there you have it. The 10 deadliest ant armies on Earth, each one is a masterpiece of evolutionary warfare. From the tree fortress builders to the nomadic destroyers, these colonies have spent millions of years perfecting the art of war. So the next time you see an ant crawling across your sidewalk, remember this. You're looking at a soldier in one of the most successful military organizations in Earth's history. These tiny warriors have conquered every continent except Antarctica, built empires that span continents, and developed weapons that would make our military engineers jealous. And honestly, we should probably be grateful they're not bigger. Because if they were, well, let's just say this countdown would have had a very different ending. So, what do you think? Did we get the ranking right? Or is there an ant army out there that deserves the crown? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And if you want to see more battles between nature's deadliest creatures, hit that subscribe button. Until next time, stay curious. And maybe watch where you put your legs.